Westborough TV, are you ready?
We are good to go.
Okay, I'll give you a quiet few seconds and then I'll get started. Okay, good evening, everybody. It being a minute past 6 p.m. on Tuesday, May 11th, 2021, I call this meeting of the Westborough Board of Selectmen to order. This meeting is being conducted remotely. So pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Westborough Board of Selectmen will be conducted by a remote participation to the greatest extent possible. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so via Westborough TV's online platforms, including youtube.com/WestboroughTV and/or westboroughTV.org. It's also available via the cable channels 192 on the Charter system and channel 28 on Verizon Fios. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of Westborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive records of the proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. So I want to welcome everyone here this evening. Normally for these meetings, we walk through all of the open board and committee appointments to help keep us on time and moving forward. Rather than read through those, I'll invite people. You can look at the agenda for this meeting is posted on the website, or there's a place on the website where you can see all of the open board and committee positions. Feel free to check the website, find an area that interests you, and we welcome you to step forward and volunteer for the many volunteer positions, board and committee memberships that help make our town run smoothly and effectively. So given that, it is 6:03, and next item on the agenda is our open forum, and I don't believe we have anyone here this evening for open forum. Welcome, Shelby. And so we will move to our next item, item 3, which is the town manager's report. And so, Christy, take it away.
Thank you. An update for our vaccine clinic. The Metro Westborough Vaccine Clinic has vaccinated over 1,500 people each of the first 3 weeks of the clinic. And in the 4th week, about 900 people. And all clinics throughout the state have seen a drop in appointments. We did hold the clinic on Saturday, May 8th for 16 to 18-year-olds and delivered 689 doses. Westborough has had over 71% of the total population receive at least 1 dose as of May 6th. As the board is aware, we received a public health shared services grant. So Westborough, along with Boylston, Northborough, and Southborough have been awarded this grant. This is consistent with the staffing study where we were looking for regional opportunities specific to public health nursing. And that's one piece of the grant, as is inspection software and tablets for restaurant and housing inspections. We did appoint a Board of Health member. The Board of Health interviewed 2 candidates for that position on April 20th. It's a town manager appointment. So Kim did sit in for me because I was on vacation, and then I did watch the interviews. And so the Board of Health did recommend Dr. Melissa Marr, who's been appointed to the Board of Health. And we also want to thank Dr. Anand Datta for his interest in the position. So we have sent him an email letting him know of all the other open positions that we'd love to see him apply for. The off Oak Street property, last year at town meeting, the town voted to authorize the Board of Selectmen to file legislation to allow the state to transfer a small piece of property behind the DPW. That piece of legislation did pass, and so we have until the end of this calendar year to complete that transaction. So we're working with town council. As you'll remember, it was for a nominal fee. I think we had appropriated about $5,000 for that transaction. The Eversource has sent us information about a hardship assistance fund. So we want to make sure that people are programmed. So we want to make sure people are aware of it. We posted it on social media. We'll get it up on our website. And then this also, the town manager report has attachments to it in both English and Spanish. But it's for people who are having trouble paying their bills or maybe behind in their bills for for Eversource. So participation in the assistance program or payment plan will prevent service disconnection when they resume after July 1st. So you want to make sure that if you have that need, that you get more information about the program. So we've sent off to some of our other departments who might have more contact with people who might have that need. In vacant positions, we have the public health director search. So we have 2 candidates that we have forwarded on to Board of Health for their consideration. And so they'll hold a public meeting to interview those 2 candidates and to select one. Conservation director, we've been working through the job descriptions. And so we hope to post that later this week. The report is long this week, so I'll skip through it and then encourage people to read it on the website. As I said, Conservation Department, Jordan has left the town of Westborough. And so we do have Sherry Wittes in the interim role. On Saturday, May 1st, we had a successful dedication for the Zwicker Farm Conservation Area. And then the Conservation Department's working with the Eagle Scout to create wooden signs for the entrance to the property. They've also had 6 hearings in front of the interim director. It's prepared to close out 4 of them. Community development, Starbucks is officially opened at 139 Turnpike Road for about the last week. Zach Bodner, who's our EDC coordinator, is working with Haggerty Group through a grant program, the local rapid recovery program, which the board's heard about previously, to come up with initiatives to help downtown businesses help recover from COVID-19. 97 Turnpike Road, which is the old FIBA building, has a new business moving in soon. Monroe Tractor, a family-owned business, sells and services heavy equipment. DPW, the water division completed their annual dead end hydrant flushing in April. Thanks to Josh Van Houten, Brian Kane, and the entire water division. They implemented some new techniques that resulted in over 25% reduction in the amount of water used and was less disruptive to residents. The annual rain barrel drive is complete, so 17 barrels were purchased by residents. Despite the recent wet weather, the Central Mass region is in a level 1 mild drought status as determined by the Mass Drought Management Task Force. And so they expect to implement the water restrictions. And then the annual paving program and preservation notice is posted to the DPW website. I hope you've also noticed that we've been posting a lot of things on Facebook as well. So all the departments, per the communication plan, have appointed people to have access to this town's Facebook page. And so I think we've been good about keeping that active. In the police department, they're looking to apply to be part of the ABLE project, which is the Active Bystandership for Law Enforcement. This is a program that's been developed by Georgetown Innovative Policing Program. And so they'll participate in the program. The program has an aim of creating a police culture in which officers routinely intervene as necessary to prevent misconduct, police mistakes, and promote officer health and wellness. And then the Board of Health has given a long update similar about the vaccine clinic. They're also working on bringing Dr. Marr on board. We talked to them about the mosquito spraying. The board voted to make the conservation director and assistant positions agents of the Board of Health in all issues that concern flood zones, which is also consistent with our staffing study. That was one of the recommendations of the staffing study. And then they continue to work with the AG's office on the abandoned property initiative. So like I said, it's a long report. We also have more information about the Eversource program, and there's a whole PowerPoint attached related to statistics for our vaccination site. Thank you.
Wow, a lot going on. Thank you. Okay. If members of the board have any questions about anything, please send a note to Christy. Item 4 on the agenda this evening is a request to close streets and put up signs for high school graduation and parade. And are Maureen or Amiot or Roberta Brown joining us?
Sela?
I'm sorry, someone just came to the counter. I did send the link over to the folks that we were expecting to appear, so I'm not sure where they are.
We're a little early, so I don't know.
Okay, we can come back to that item then, because Patrick Tracy is here with us.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Okay, and so this is item 5 on the agenda. Veterans Advisory Board requests to place signs and on the Rotary. And so let me just pull up my notes on this. And so as noted in the packet, at our prior meeting, we approved the Veterans Advisory Board placing flags on the Rotary with a schedule this spring, this summer, and this fall around veterans holidays and the 4th of July. The request did not include a request for signage on the Rotary, but since the Veterans Advisory Board has placed signs in the past, the Board of Selectmen made it clear that the signs are not allowed per the town policy. That last year's decision to do that was an exception specifically related to COVID. The Veterans Advisory Board requested that they be on this agenda to appeal that decision and discuss it. And so in our packets, we have lengthy email detail. I shouldn't say lengthy, it's really detailed email points from John Gallina and from the Veterans Advisory Board. And Christy had also provided an email to them that offered multiple alternatives, including the banner on the posts across West Main Street in front of Town Hall, on the cemetery fence on West Main Street, and potentially on the light posts using the small banners as well. And so Mr. Tracy's here. So, typically we would do this and have him speak during open forum, but as this is an active request for an item on our agenda, I will give Mr. Tracy the floor to make a statement for a couple of minutes, and then the board can discuss and deliberate. So, Mr. Tracy, you have the floor.
All right. Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for your time. Just as way of background, I'll try and be brief here, but I am co-chair of the Westborough Veterans Advisory Board, and I'm appearing this evening on behalf of the board to request reconsideration and reevaluation of the recent decision to restrict the signage, which is veteran signage that's placed in conjunction with the American flags on the Rotary. And just to note, the signage and the flags have been past practice of the board and the town for a number of years. And as Mr. Edenberg pointed out, that is done in conjunction with federal holidays, Memorial Day, July 4th, Veterans Day. I believe that everyone probably received my correspondence dated May 6th, which kind of outlines the position of the board and some of the issues that we'd like to have addressed. But just to be brief and as a refresher, just to kind of put it into a refresher. So again, the signage is non-political. Obviously, we're a board sponsored by the town. We're not a part of any political movements. We're not a private organization. We're a town-sponsored board. I think that's important to note. The signage and the flags placed together are extremely important to the board, to the veteran community, as well as to the community at large. It's a visual recognition of the service and sacrifice, not only that the veterans have given, but also their families. So by just having the flags there without the signage, it doesn't have the same visual impact or the same meaning. And I think just generally speaking, the signage and the flags placed together really generate positive feedback for the community. It generates positive feedback for the town, and it certainly generates positive publicity about some of the different issues that face veterans and their families. And being that it's really the center of town, it's the best place for that type of signage in conjunction with the placement of the flags. Importantly too, because that's such a high traffic area, this is an opportunity for us to use it as a teaching mechanism for our youth, for our kids, so they can recognize the veterans in our community and in our country and what they've done and what that means to the town and to the country overall. So again, I think that the community and the veterans within the town support this overwhelmingly. We find the decision, quite frankly, somewhat disappointing. I think that the signage in no way impedes traffic whatsoever. It's not an obstruction or anything of that nature. Again, it's been past practice of the town. And again, these signs and the flags are placed during times of federal holidays, Memorial Day, July 4th, Veterans Day. These are all very important national holidays for our active duty troops, for those that have retired, or just veterans and their families as a whole. So with that in mind, and again, you can use my correspondence from May 6th as a reference point. Obviously, it's much more detailed, but the board would respectfully request and really encourages the board to reconsider and reevaluate its decision. As part of that reevaluation, we're requesting the town to allow the Veterans Board to place the signage on the Rotary during those respective times, along with the American flag placements. So just to wrap things up, I'm happy to address any questions. And if no questions this evening, you can feel free to email me or John Gallinall. But I really do appreciate you hearing us out and appreciate your consideration.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up to discussion to the board. Shelby.
Yep. Thank you, Alan, and thank you, Mr. Tracy, for coming before the board. You know, the town has been shared with the Veterans Advisory Board a policy that's been in existence since 1991. That is, it's very short. It's probably the shortest policy we have, but it specifically says that it clearly defines the purpose of the Rotary as it relates to signs. And it specifically says signs in the Rotary are to be limited to notices for town meeting, election day, and water conservation bans. And, you know, that is the policy. So this came up last year. At that time, when it was on the board at that time, when it came up, the signs were already placed with the flags. And so the board at that time said, you know, it has been past practice. It has been allowed. We'll just sort of let it go, but we have to address it, you know, going forward. So in my mind, it has always been, we either address the policy and fix the policy and create, you know, a new policy, which we haven't done, or we allow for an exception, or we stand by the policy as it is. So I do believe that the flags in and of themselves are a beautiful tribute to our veterans, that they themselves could stand alone. But again, that's not my decision. The Veterans Advisory Board does a beautiful display. So I in no way want to critique that. I do think that our town manager has offered a number of different locations where banners, plural, could be displayed that aren't just located, you know, right in the downtown area. They include the digital billboards and others that Alan has already shared here, so I won't repeat them. I think the flags and the signs collectively certainly give us all an opportunity to honor our veterans and address many of the points made by Mr. Tracy. But I'm going to go back to sort of my first point, which is we have a policy, and unfortunately we haven't, as a board and prior boards, adhered to that policy. And so I think it's important that we, when we start making exceptions to policy, I think we invite unwanted challenges. And I think that if there were no alternatives being offered that were, again, my opinion, very visible, very prominent, then I might feel differently and might be more inclined to make an exception. But I support the board's prior decision at our previous meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall.
Okay.
If you don't, if possible, if I could just respond to that before we get into further dialogue, I'll again keep it short. I would submit that if the policy was in effect as of 1991, it again has been arbitrarily enforced. And certainly if we consider past practice, the Veterans Board has always been allowed to install the signs along with the flags. The alternative accommodations to the signage is not sufficient because it doesn't carry the same visual weight and recognition that the two combined hold together. So if the board is going to deny the request, then we would like, as part of the Veterans Board, to request an exception. And if that is not sufficient, we would request a revision to the town policy because, quite frankly, that policy is quite sparse and bare bones. And I think there could be room for better verbiage and more allowance for things of this nature. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ian?
Thank you. Mr. Tracy, you just hit on some of the things I was going to say. I think that as I think back, I think that as a board, yes, we have a longstanding policy, but I think our enforcement of it, our board and past boards, has been arbitrary, I guess is the word. I think back to not just what we're talking about here in past practice of allowing for this. I think back to last year for our senior class that we allowed, I think it was 3 signs around the Rotary that were congratulating seniors, et cetera. And we made exceptions there. They didn't fit the policy. We also did another, the poppies on the little island there as well with the sign along with that. I do agree with Mr. Tracy that I think while we've offered alternatives, putting the sign away from the flags doesn't have the effect or impact that people may not tie the two together. They should, but they may not. And I think some of the points that were there. So my thoughts here is that we basically, or my motion here would be that we grant an exception, allowing for the signs to be placed this year, but that we also as a board revisit our policy, because I do think that it is limited. When I think about what is in that policy, those are things that we have been putting on the orange DPW electronic signboard versus actually putting signs themselves in the Rotary. So I think it is a good opportunity for us to revisit and relook at that policy. I think I had one final thought here, but of course it slipped my mind. But anyways, I think that's my stand. Oh, the other piece that I wanted to hit, and I think that town manager had called this out, is that once again, this year is a year of exceptions. Unfortunately, as we know, we're not able to have our traditional Memorial Day parade, where we would parade through and see residents around the Rotary and going by that. So again, I think things are in place. We have past precedent. I would be in favor of granting the exception and as a board taking the policy up at a future meeting to revisit that policy and see about amending it.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Patrick or Sean, any comments?
Yeah, I'll just make one quickly. I think you said the policy initially was created in 1991. So it's a 30-year-old policy that apparently, I guess over the course of those 30 years hasn't been enforced in certain situations. I'm curious as to, I guess, what the genesis of the policy was back in 1991. Like, what inspired it? Was it something related to the insurance of the town, or what it was that caused us to create this policy? I definitely think it's worth revisiting. Anything that's 30 years old probably should be revisited. And I would be okay with an exception, prior to us revisiting that policy as well.
Okay, thank you. Patrick?
Yeah, I guess my only comments are on this are as a son of a veteran and having watched my dad walk in the Memorial Day Parade 30 years ago. It's unfortunate that we can't do that this year. And at this point, I certainly would also grant an exception. I think it's important that we show and recognize our veteran community in these times, because they're not going to get the recognition by other means that we're normally traditionally used to. So I would support that motion, Ian.
Okay. I guess I definitely see both sides of this discussion, right? That there is a policy in place. I wouldn't say enforcement's been arbitrary. I would say that we've been open to exceptions in the past. And I've also seen that, even though in the past, when exceptions have been granted, and us explicitly stating that it's one time and not setting a precedent, that that part of the discussion gets lost. And so we start seeing requests from other organizations to plant signs on the Rotary at different times. And the problem, it's sort of, realistically at some point, if we let some, we need to let all. And then we run into logistics, we run into, signs that could be a traffic hazard. We run into freedom of speech issues and potential organizations that we'd rather not be using that space for public signage. We certainly even, within the confines of the current policy, with political candidates and protests or people advocating for various causes, using the Rotary, we see near misses and other issues around the Rotary, and so managing that. I guess sort of listening to the conversation this evening, I've shifted a little bit, and that I'm comfortable with an extension, an exception for this year, and a review of the policy and the option. I would argue that a banner that in front of Town Hall that refers to flags on the Rotaries and our support for veterans, that same type of messaging on the digital sign at Lyman Street in East Main and on the 2 electronic billboards on Route 9, actually can tie that message to the fact that there are flags on the Rotaries, and even include pictures on the digital signage boards on Route 9 of the flags on the Rotary. And that actually reaches a broader audience and gives more visibility to the cause of veterans and the town's support of veterans. So I guess I'm saying I'm comfortable with a one-time exception so we can review the policy in more detail. But I would say that the other options should not be considered mutually exclusive. And I would ask that the Veterans Advisory Board, step back and consider the broader visibility and the broader awareness that comes from, leveraging the range of places where we could post a message. And so with that, Patrick, and then if someone wants to make a motion.
Yeah, I guess, Alan, I understand the concerns of opening up Pandora's box here a little bit, right? But the fact is that this is a community, the veterans, we have memorials on public property throughout town to our veterans, right? A World War II memorial, veteran, Vietnam War memorial, et cetera, in front of Forbes Building. There's already precedents set. This is also an organization that is, as mentioned previously, is also part of the town. So it's a little different scenario. So I hope that when we do reopen that policy, that we allow an exception for this particular situation. This isn't some club or political movement party. This is in recognition of people who have given their lives to our country. So it's a very different situation that I think needs to be hopefully long-term an exception or incorporated into that policy.
Alan, I think you recognized me, but you're on mute.
Yep, Shelby, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I want to reiterate that I don't disagree with the comments made by my fellow select board members. And I think that there's no greater individual that we can honor than those who have sacrificed or their families, to Mr. Tracy's point. So I think that making sure that our policy forward-looking recognizes that is critically important and needs to be a priority for this board. I do respectfully disagree with my fellow board members in that I think when you make an exception for one, even though it's a town department, they're a town committee, if you will, board, there could be others that come forward with a request that this board will be challenged to apply, sort of this same or similar, I should say, logic to. And I think that given that there are alternatives, as I've already stated, I'll respectfully disagree with Mr. Tracy, where it's not like we're saying sort of there's no other opportunity to kind of publicize and give credit, certainly where credit is due, and to honor the veterans. So appreciate the opportunity to weigh in on the discussion. Thanks for recognizing me a second time, Ellen.
Thank you. Is there a formal motion?
Yeah, Alan, I would move to allow the Veterans Advisory Board to place signs on the Rotary consistent with the dates the flags are placed on the Rotary. And I guess as part of the motion, I'd like to say that and then have the board place on a future agenda a review, a potential update of the sign policy.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, any additional discussion? Okay, seeing, hearing none, we'll go to a roll call vote. Sean?
Keogh, yes.
Ian?
Johnson, yes.
Patrick?
Welch, yes.
Shelby?
Marshall, no.
And Edinburgh, yes. So it passes on a vote of 4-1-0, 5 being present. And we will note to schedule a review of the policy. Actually, updates and review of board policies is one of our goals for the year. And Selectman Welch has agreed to help spearhead that effort. So you have an action item, Patrick. Okay, thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Tracy.
Yes, thank you everyone for your time. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay, so next on, we'll go back to our prior agenda item, which is a request to close streets and put up signs for the high school graduation parade. And so joining us is Maureen Amiot, who's involved in the high school senior parade. So if Maureen, you can unmute. While she's doing that, I can read some of the provide the background information. I know, is Roberta on as well?
I'm on, Alan. Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay. So just as an introduction, Roberta Brown and Maureen Amiot are heading up a committee to organize a rolling parade for the Westborough High School graduating class of 2021. This would take place on Saturday, June 5th, starting at 10 a.m. The parade route will start at Hastings Elementary School and end at the high school. So it is going East Main Street to West Main Street. It's estimated to be over 300 cars in total. Additionally, there's a request to put signs along the parade route. Ms. Brown and Ms. Amiot have provided examples of the sign as part of the information provided to the board. Chief Purcell and Chief Laurie have submitted comments which are also provided to the board, and they are in support of the parade and its route. And so if Roberta or Maureen, you'd like to provide any additional information, we can.
Absolutely, Alan. We're basically doing the same thing as we did last year with Brian Callahan, but we're just switching the route around. We're going to start from Hastings, end at Westborough High School. The seniors are going to go back into the high school, and they're going to take a sharp left to where the tennis courts are. and they're going to do their farewell to their teachers, and they're going to keep on rolling down onto Ruggles Street. Now, we're going to bring in classic cars as well. And we have about 100 classic cars coming into the parade. We're going to merge them in. And they're going to be sitting at 106 East Main Street, which is the Reliant Group used to be. Now it's a vacant parking lot. And so now we're going to merge them in, and we're going to give them an extra kick. And Brian also got us the jazz band, which is like 5 to 10 kids coming in. And we like to set them up at Arturo's if Dominic agrees. And then I have a DJ in the middle of the Rotary that's going to play. And I like to have 100 signs going up and down the parade route. If people like to decorate, I'd like the parents to participate with their senior child, to participate in decorating, putting out balloons. We're going to have the signs going up and down the route if possible. And the only sign that I request is who's going to sponsor the DJ. So, and I like the, if possible, the storefronts to decorate. If they like to encourage and support the senior class of 2021. I wanted to make it into a good event, a really fun event this year, which I can get the classic cars, I can get part of the marching parade. I wanted to make it feel special, not only for the seniors, but for the rest of the community in town.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? Ian, no. Sean, no. Shelby?
So I have a couple of questions. First of all, I want to thank Roberta and Maureen for organizing this. I think it's a great event. We saw that previously, and not only for the seniors, but for the whole community. So thank you so much. I did have a couple of questions or concerns. One is the street management. As someone that was sort of helping in that regard at the last parade, I feel like the streets should be that enter onto East and West Main need to be blocked off so that there's not traffic confusion or people turning around. The streets get really crowded with pedestrians, and so I think road closures of some sort. So I think, Christy, you might want to speak to that, or I know Chief Laurie is on as well, or was.
Right. I hear you on that. I spoke with Chip Dappolite, and what we're going to do, Shelby, is that we're going to continue with the traffic on the other side. So the other side will keep on rolling, and we're going to merge the traffic, the cars into the parade. The classic cars, we'll have 6 go in, and then we just keep on merging the cars as we go by. This time, we're going to have the Rotary people, the Westborough Connects people on Church Street, Lyman Street, and on Milk Street going into the Rotary. So all that we have to do is just kind of keep the parade rolling, just kind of put people on the route like Willow Street or something. And then as soon as the parade goes by, then they'll just continue coming in, and it doesn't really stop that much. It's just going to stop, Shelby, when the kids go by and the classic cars. That's it. We're going to have yellow smocks on them, like Chip said, and we're all going to help each other. We're more organized this time because I had more than 2 weeks. So
Sure.
Everybody's bored. And we all talk to one another, and this time it's going to go smoothly, Shelby. So I'm really happy.
Yeah, and it's not that it didn't go smoothly last year. I think it was the first, and so it's expected that we learn from that and we improve. I just want to make sure that that is being addressed. So, working with public safety. So, I'll trust that that's being addressed. I will bring up something just as a follow-on to the last agenda item we just had, and that is signs. And that is that per our current policy, started back in 1991, the policy says that there can't be signs placed to stand on the rotary independently. You know, the policy is very specific. To Ian's point, in our last agenda item last year, we did have the banners congratulating the class of 2020. I feel like we are in a different space as it relates to the pandemic, and I'm just going to be consistent with my last comments in the last agenda item, in that I don't think that there should be signs placed on the rotary. When we want to address it as a policy, as a board for future events, then that's fine. But I don't think I'm fine if people want to place them on their personal property and you coordinate that with them. But I don't feel that they should be placed at the rotary. Those are my comments.
Okay. Could I place it outside of the rotary on the roof if I get permission? The homeowners and the store manager?
Yeah, I think that if there's permission, and my other comments that I just have here on my own notes as I prepared was, I don't know, where the town has like easements, in terms of the strip of grass and all of that. So I trust that people are going to be supportive of it, but this was the Pandora's box that I was concerned with opening. So,
okay.
So that's my only comment is specific to the rotary. And, I think if you're going to place a sign, not unlike someone placing a campaign sign, you want someone's permission to place it on their property.
Okay.
Thank you, Shelby. Okay, so Roberta, you're going to look for places other than on the rotary for the signs?
Absolutely, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and Ian, you had a question or a comment?
Just a comment, I think, and agree with what Shelby said there. The one piece is just like campaign signs. If someone is there, in essence, holding the sign, then it's fine. So, Roberta, to that point, if there's somebody there, I think you mentioned a DJ, that's a person there, that there could be a sign being held at that point. Or if you have people holding them, the rotary's fine. That's the policy. It's just having signs there and nobody around. Just like any of us, when we have campaign, no, you can't stick them in the ground and walk away. You have to have somebody holding them.
Yeah, and that's a great point. If the DJ has a banner in front of the table and
right.
Obviously that's a great point.
Okay, that's what I was going to do. That was the second question. If I could put a banner on the table, because she's going to use the table. So that just answered my question. That's all I need. It's just a little banner to put in front of her table, and that's it. I'll be happy with that. No problem. Can the storefronts decorate their store? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah, as long as they're landlord, they're whoever the owner is allows for it, absolutely,
yeah,
and we would encourage them.
Okay, great. I think that's all I need.
Okay. Oh, excuse me, Roberta. Patrick has a question or a comment?
Yeah, just a comment. Hey, Roberta, great job on this. You and Maureen, thank you for doing this. Really looking forward to seeing it. I have a graduating senior next door to me, and I know that he is excited about the event. So it's great that the community is stepping up and doing this, and then you guys are leading the charge. So thank you very much.
Oh yes, well we got Brian. Brian is the one. Brian and I are the one that Maureen is part of my logistic team with the rest of them. But I gotta give kudos to Brian Callahan, because Brian Callahan is really good, and we really work together really good. So I have to give kudos to Brian Callahan as well, Patrick. But thank you very much.
Okay. I do have one follow-up question regarding the road closures during the parade. In addition to volunteers in yellow vests, is there going to be some sort of marker? I realize my video's frozen. Hold on. Is there going to be some sort of marker, either cones put down or one of the portable traffic diversion horses, so that there's something, a physical cue to drivers as well, that the road's closed for the parade? I would hate to see someone at one of those cross streets get impatient and try to inch their way or push their way or accelerate their way into or through or over a volunteer.
That's a good, yeah. I think I'm gonna talk to Chip Dapperley and, the chief about it and see what they suggest about it. And then by all means, Alan, I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
definitely.
Chief Laurie.
So we're reaching out to the Semlec motorcycle unit as well. So I'll have some answers probably the end of this week on how many motor units are coming, and they'll also assist, as rolling roadblocks through certain intersections. So I put on, we'll have 5 added police officers that day. There's numerous volunteers. I personally, I kind of endorsed and appreciate the route going in the direction it's going. Last year we had some issues with kind of 2 parades, one coming back. So I think this will satisfy that. And there's some testing going on at the high school. So there'll be a lot of parking spaces that are going to be utilized for the kids. So I think this is going to work out. We'll handle it like we did last year. Hopefully we're going to have a very safe event. And like I said, I plan on bringing Semlec motor unit in as well. There'll be several motorcycle officers from outside communities.
Okay, great. Would someone like to make the motion?
Sure, I'll move to close the road traveling west from Hastings Elementary School to Westborough High School for the purpose of a class of 2021 senior parade in accordance with the activities in the proposal letter that was submitted and subject to traffic rules and regulations.
Okay, thank you. And a second?
I'll second that, Marshall.
Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, roll call vote. Patrick?
Welch, yes.
Sean?
Keo, yes.
Shelby?
Marshall, yes.
Ian?
Johnson, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. So it passes 5-0-0, 5 being present. Thank you to Roberta and Maureen and the entire team and our public safety departments and the school system for working together to make this happen again. We look forward to a great event.
Thank you, Alan and the board. We really appreciate that. And the senior class of 2021 does too. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to agenda item number 6. We're joined by Chris Pant, our DPW director, with a request to declare items as surplus.
Good evening, everybody. So you should have in front of you a list of 10 items that we are requesting you to approve as surplus. These are all items that are no longer mission capable. It's not worth investing money into this equipment to repair it or replace it. So we're asking that you declare surplus and we'll then dispose of it properly through an auction.
Okay, Shelby, you have a question?
No, we're happy to make a motion.
Oh, excellent.
I move to declare the presented Department of Public Works items as surplus.
I'll second that, Selectman Johnson.
Okay, thank you, Marshall and Johnson, for the motion and the second. Any discussion or questions? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to roll call vote. And my Hollywood squares have shifted, so roll call vote, Shelby.
Marshall, yes.
Patrick.
Welch, yes.
Sean.
Keo, yes.
Ian.
Johnson, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. So passes on a vote of 5-0-0, 5 being present. Thank you, Director Pant. Okay. Next item on the agenda is a request to award bid for water facilities contract operator. I'm not sure if we have everything from the proposal review committee or if we're passing this over, because we posted a meeting prior to town meeting Saturday morning to address this as well if needed.
Yeah, so we're going to pass over it tonight.
Okay. So we'll pass that over and move on to agenda item number 8, a discussion and vote to suspend the Board of Selectmen's policy on drought water restrictions. Director Pant, you have the floor.
Okay, so the Board of Selectmen has a policy on drought warning restrictions. It was adopted in April of 2002. We also have a Water Management Act permit that was authorized by the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection in 2010. What we've identified is these two documents have some conflicting information in terms of water restrictions. our Water Management Act is specific about what water restrictions we should impose based on certain criteria. And the memo that you've probably seen also lists criteria for or steps we should take to conserve water. And I think it's basically just creating confusion and something we need to clean up. And so our recommendation is that we suspend the policy from the Board of Selectmen, continue with our Water Management Act permit as authorized by the DEP. And at a future date, we will update the policy to reconcile differences and more clearly state what our requirements are for water restrictions in a Board of Selectmen policy.
Okay, thank you. Shelby, you have your hand up.
I do. Quick question, Chris. The policy, the water management policy that you cite, is that or will that be available to the public through the website, assuming this policy, the recommendation goes forward to suspend it?
The existing policy will be removed from the website.
Okay.
Then we'll post our water restrictions that are taken from the Water Management Act. We'll cite that and the DEP permit number and all that sort of thing. And then at a future date, once we reconcile differences and get all the wording straight, and even terminology has changed over the last 18 years. So we'll get all that correct, and then we'll come back to you with a recommendation for an updated policy.
Okay, great. And my second question, if I may, Alan?
Yes, please.
Okay. And is, I guess generally speaking, is the DEP, the Water Management Act permit, is that more restrictive than our Selectmen's policy?
It is more restrictive, but it's not, it's what we, I know for sure was what we had out last year.
Okay.
And I think it's pretty much been what we've published over the past several years.
Okay.
The issue is just someone goes on the website, they find this policy, and then they're like, oh, what do I do?
Okay. Thanks very much, Chris. Appreciate
it. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to suspend the Board of Selectmen's policy on drought water restrictions. I guess I would like to add to the motion, pending the review and recommendations for an updated policy.
Is that a motion, Alan?
Yeah. Well, someone can just say so moved.
I did.
Excellent. So Ian moved, and
just one question on that motion, Alan. Do we need to make a motion to also accept the DEP water management policy? Do we need? I
think it would help, to be clear.
Well, it's a requirement.
It's a requirement that we act on. I don't know that we have to adopt anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're already required to abide by the permit as it's authorized.
I guess Patrick, to your point, I only wonder if it just for the public's clarity, they would know that we have to accept that. So,
well, so the policy would be updated per the permit. I mean, you can do it if you want, but it's not necessary.
Okay. Yeah, if it's not necessary, then we don't need to do it.
Okay. So do we have a second? Excellent. Thank you, Selectman Keo. Okay, so any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Patrick?
Welch, yes.
Shelby?
Marshall, yes.
Sean?
Keo, yes.
Ian?
Johnson, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. So passes on a vote of 5-0-0, 5 being present. Thank you very much, Director Payant.
Thank you.
Okay. Next on the agenda, item number 9, we're joined by Chief Purcell, who is Fire Chief and also heads our Emergency Management Agency, on a request to approve and sign the Comprehensive Emergency Management and Hazmat Plans. And so I will, Chief Purcell, I'll give you the floor to introduce, and then we can open it up to, I know, a couple of members of the board have a couple of questions.
Sure. So, hi, my name is Patrick Purcell. I serve as your fire chief here in the town of Westborough. I have Deputy Jason Fursky with me tonight. And just before we get started on the presentation, the quick background is that the town actually didn't have an official emergency management director until I took over as fire chief. At that time, the town manager asked me to assume the responsibilities for that. And as we saw the position start to grow and the requirements by MEMA, for instance, the demands for the job grow, I was allowed to, through the Board of Selectmen, appoint Deputy Fursky as the Deputy Emergency Management Director as well. And part of our responsibilities are that we manage the town's comprehensive emergency management plan, and that had not been updated since 2009 or 2010. Historically, that is done about every 10 years. And we also manage the hazardous materials emergency plan. One of Deputy Fursky's responsibilities is also he's the chair of the local emergency planning committee. And if you don't know what that is, that's a committee that's put together a mix of private establishments or private businesses in Westborough and municipal employees. And what that really does is helps us get a handle on what hazardous materials are in existence or in the town of Westborough, and develop plans to respond to incidents involving them and be able to protect the citizens. A requirement of the LEPC is to have it recertified every 5 years, and part of that recertification involves the things that you saw in your packet, the SEMP plan and the hazmat plan. And Deputy Fursky is going to talk to you about those right now.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me come and discuss this with you. It's probably not the most invigorating topic, and I apologize, Ian, that there will be nothing about Capri's in this presentation. So the LEPC is due for recertification. We're actually pushing the envelope a little bit overdue, but I've been working closely with our MEMA rep to get that taken care of. And one of the key components is getting the SEMP, the Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan, together. And the way that FEMA throws an acronym at everything and a bunch of initials at everything, and it's very difficult to wrap your head around. The way that I look at the SEMP is kind of like the foundation. That's the base of everything that we're working off of. So that kind of sets us as a common terminology, and kind of the four key components of emergency management that FEMA points out is preparedness, mitigation, response, and recovery. And this document kind of highlights those four areas. And I think that more of this document is used in the planning stages. So if we were to plan an exercise, an event, or if we had a weather event coming down the road, this is a great document to reference that. The most critical component that we get out of this, and this is something that I've been very excited about, is we staff our emergency operations center, the EOC, pretty much anytime that we have a storm, a weather-related event, or even in times of kind of civil unrest or any planned events that we're can forecast coming down the road. This document sets out the standard operating guidelines, or basically each of the positions that we staff in the EOC, between the police department, the fire department, the school department, the DPW, the town manager. I think I hit everybody, but it gives them the guidelines on what they're kind of responsible for when we put the EOC together. And based off of that document, if for some reason or other Christy wasn't readily available to fill in and we had to plop Kim down into the position, she'd be able to kind of look at the cheat sheet and get an idea of the things and roles, responsibilities, and expectations that she would be expected to follow. And again, picking a department that has a little bit more depth. The police department, if they ended up down at the level of a sergeant being in the EOC, they would at least have a guidance on information that they follow. So our SEMP plan is really the basis. It's also a public document, so this is kind of generic and doesn't get into a whole lot of specific guidances. We do have additional plans coming down the road. We do currently have a continuity of operations plan, the COOP plan. That's something that's not on the public. We do have working with the Board of Health on a public morgue. We have a debris management plan that we're working on updating. We have the dam plans for Sandra Pond and Nichols. A lot of these different plans, Director Payant, DPW Director Payant mentioned having a cybersecurity plan. We do have some stuff in the work. I'm actually going to defer to the fire chief to address some of those questions on cybersecurity. But we do have a lot of those different plans that are in process, but we needed to get this core foundation plan in the works and get that out there. Again, the hazmat plan, that's a separate plan. That was also needed for the LEPC to recertify. The LEPC having full certification is important because it does afford us different grant opportunities. Other than that, I don't want to go too deep into it, trying to keep it on the 30,000 foot elevation, but if I go into any questions.
So just before we do the questions, I wanted to throw out that, just as a reminder, so the documents before you, particularly the SEM plan, that is just a foundation. What we do from beyond today is, and we have, like the deputy said, we have other things that in the works already. You will see annexes built into those, and every time one of those reports is done, and to go into the annex, it'll come before you for review. He talked about the continuity of operations plan that is done. That does need to be updated. I have not done that in the last few months, so that needs to probably be updated. And the big one that seems to be hitting hard across the Commonwealth is, and I've learned a lot about this, is something I'm really not that well educated at, and I'm really trying to get myself up to speed, and that is on cybersecurity. So within the last month, I put a project together with Mark Stockman, and we wrote a project and submitted it to Homeland Security and got funding to have an audit done, a cybersecurity audit done for ourselves and 4 other communities. And we were just awarded the funds for it. We don't have them yet, but as soon as we get the money, we'll be moving forward on that, and that'll help us to develop the annex to go into this report. There's a variety of other things that'll be coming before you, but as of for today, this is just the foundation to get us started to redo the entire plan. By the time this is done, it's going to be about probably 5 times thicker than what you already had to read. So I think you'd probably appreciate that coming at you in piecemeal as well.
Absolutely. I'll open it up to the board for any questions or comments. I know, Patrick, you had some.
Yeah, I guess first of all, in my brief tenure, Chief, I'll just mention you guys won the award for the largest volume of information. It is an amazing document, and I am thrilled to see it in place. That you guys are working on it. It's a fantastic body of proactive work, so that the town is really well prepared. So kudos to you and Jason and the whole team that are working on it.
I can't lie, Deputy First, he did the majority of the work, so but thank you. He did.
Yeah,
he really did.
My only question, and to be honest, I have not read through the whole thing. I went through, kind of skimmed through sections, just kind of get understanding what's going on. And one thing that I picked up on was, and I just wanted to get your opinion on this to see if there's anything we as a board can do to help. There seemed to be a little bit, in my mind, of ambiguity in the local declaration of emergency. And we don't have to solve this now. I'm just really curious if in that section, if you guys need the board to do anything around charter or bylaw to make sure that it's very clear as to how that local declaration of emergency, who does that, and how that part of the process works. So that's really my only question to you.
Sure. So we've actually gone down this road. We declared a state of emergency, a local state of emergency, when the microburst hit in, I believe, 2016-ish. We kind of follow the standard across the Commonwealth, and in about 99% of the communities, it usually is the chief elected official. So historically, what I've done times 1, but I've seen it done prior in the prior administration here, is when we set up the emergency operations center, we oftentimes invite the administration from town as well as the board of selectmen to the EOC in the morning, and we do a briefing. And at that point, if we determine that we're going to if we're going to establish or declare a state of emergency, that is at the point where they would sign that off, and then it would be my responsibility to notify MEMA after that. So I don't really think you need, it's really a standard way to operate in a standard across the Commonwealth. There are a few communities that have opted to divert that responsibility to other administrative officials, but for the most part, it's the mayor, the chair of the board of selectmen. Really, that's really about it. City chairs of city council.
Just as long as you have what you need. I just wanted to make sure it was clear. So it sounds like you got what you need. Thank you.
And I guess along those lines, just for clarification, deep in the document, it does say that it's the chief municipal officer, but towards the front of the document, on page 14, under planning assumptions, it says the select board. And so I think that's just there's just a slight inconsistency there, unless I'm misreading it.
I don't know exactly which 2 sections you're talking about, Alan, but there are 2 distinct positions. There are the chief elected official, and then also the municipal officer, that would be the town manager in our case.
Okay. I'll take a look. I can address it offline.
Okay.
The question. And then before we go out to other comments, just given the discussion of cyber security and cyber attacks, can that be added as a man-made hazard in the vulnerability assessment section?
I really think that it's in our best interest to keep it separate in an annex, just because it's really its own animal. It's really becoming a big deal. And if you really, I've been learning a lot. There's actually over 500 million attempts to access municipal infrastructure a day just in the Commonwealth. And I think keeping it separate, unless I'm missing your question, I think keeping it separate, having our own policies regarding that is probably in our best interest.
No, I agree. Separate for policies and procedures, but yep. in the introductory space of the document, you have a section that's threat, hazard, and vulnerability assessment.
Sure.
I would, under man-made hazards, you've got nuclear incidents and civil unrest. We just might want to add a bullet point with a sentence or two about cyber security.
Yeah,
and then, and my final question was under natural hazards in that same section. Just given the number of brush fires it seems we've had in the last couple of years, and the fact that some of them became, larger than we would like, if fire should be listed as a natural hazard as well.
Sure.
So Alan, when I look at that section, it looks to me that it's limited to cyber threats, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and high-yield explosive threats, and terrorism. I'm reading the same on page 11.
Yeah, so it's cyber threats is mentioned in the introductory paragraph. I'm just wondering if we should have a bullet point below with a little, an additional sentence or two about the nature of the threat, since it's new. So I through my business, I get alerts, and since the first of the year, I believe there have been 10 successful ransomware attacks against municipal government entities in Massachusetts. So it's definitely a concern.
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely an easy bullet point that could be added. I don't know that it's probably just an oversight in specifically mentioning it. The other stuff on fire, I think that when you look at fires in relative comparison to the wildfires out in the Midwest, I think that we'd be hard pressed to reach that scale, but it's definitely something I can look at.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Shelby?
Yeah, appreciate the update and the overview, because it answered almost all of my questions. So thank you very much. I guess I'm curious in general, the section that talks about the changes to the policy or changes to the SEMP, I guess, would be allowed by you, Chief Purcell, Town Manager, or the Deputy Director. How would the board be notified of those changes? I'm looking at page 2.
Oh, Pat, I muted you because we're getting feedback.
Sorry. Anytime we do an amendment or a change, we'd be putting it in your packet and bringing it before you.
Okay.
It's very rare that we actually make changes, to be honest. The most,
yep.
I think over the life of the last one, the changes that we actually fell behind on, but that were the most frequent were people's names.
Yep.
All the players.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Any place that I could remain generic on a name and use more of a title as opposed to putting, John Doe, putting, DPW director or exposition, to eliminate trying to have to stay on top of that. I think that's, in looking at all of these plans, I think that's the biggest challenge is they put, Sandy Jones as the contact and a phone number, but she's been gone for 15 years. So
right. Yeah,
trying to stay ahead of that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And where will this being that it is a public policy, where will it actually live? Is it, does it live under the fire department under emergency preparedness guide, which looks different certainly than what we're looking at here? Or is it, it's not a selectman's policy?
So there's two places that I'd eventually like to put it. The first one would be up on our, there's a link on our website so that anybody would be able to read it. And then the second spot that it goes is that there's a site called Web EOC, which is controlled by MEMA. It'll get uploaded there. So whenever we activate the EOC, whether we activate it as at our location or the alternate location, we would have access to it.
Okay. And just one other piece of feedback, just because documents get long, if it's possible at all to have like a date in the footer so that it's clear what version it is and what date once it's in its, you know, as we go along in the annexes, that would be, I think, helpful, just because it's, you know, you don't always have the first page and someone's giving you a copy of it. Thanks. Thank you very much for this work. I'm like Patrick, very, very pleased that we have it, and appreciate you taking this on to update it, because it's clearly no small task.
The other thing that I do have that again, I had about 10,000 pieces of information, so trying to just give you the highlights. We do have a field guide book that's on the list to get updated, so it'll be kind of a condensed version of this, as well as some additional documents.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board, Ian or Sean? Okay, then I will entertain the motion.
I'll make the motion. I move to approve and sign the comprehensive emergency management and hazmat plans as presented.
I'll second that, Selectman Johnson.
Thank you. So moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
It is a question. Do we also need to reauthorize the LEPC? I heard that talk, or is that just, does that come automatically once we approve these plans?
So there was something, this is part of the process. I don't think you need to sign off on that. We had some other responsibilities. We had to host a tabletop drill. We did that a few months ago. And I think these are the three things, the primary things to recertify. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jay.
Correct. These are the three things. I need to pull a bunch of information out of this document, the most recent updated document, to put on the application, but there's nothing else that is required that I'm aware of.
Perfect. So nothing that we have to authorize. There's no approvals we need. Perfect.
I do not believe so.
Awesome.
Okay. Thank you. With that, I'll move to a roll call vote. Sean.
Keogh, yes.
Ian.
Johnson, yes.
Shelby.
Marshall, yes.
And Patrick.
Welch, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. So passes a vote of 5-0-0, 5 being present. Thank you very much, Chief and Deputy, and in both of your roles, for both of you, in pulling this together and continuing the effort. Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda is a presentation from Chief Laurie about police department cruisers.
So I'm going to try to pull up this presentation. Can everyone hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So there was some discussion in town, and we dealt with it at the last town meeting as well. Colors of the cruisers, tinted windows. So I decided, going back into town meeting this Saturday, that I'd address it again, hopefully to avoid having to get up on town meeting floor again about this. And I also wanted to throw in a couple of slides, some issues about one of the symbols on our cruisers is a thin blue line. I wanted to explain that as well. So our cruisers in town have changed over time. Chief Parker, the scheme was all white. Alan Gordon was a blended black and white. And under my leadership, management, we have a solid black cruiser. And you can see in the back, you can see, the all-white car and the black.
Oh, excuse me, Chief.
Yeah.
We're seeing the PowerPoint application and not the presentation.
Oh, it's on my screen.
If you just go to start from the if you go from beginning in the top left.
Can you see it now?
He has to stop presenting and select the different view.
And now it's the title page. We were showing the picture before, Jeff.
I don't know what I did here.
If you want, I can pull it up.
So how about this? I'm going to send you the current presentation right now.
Is it the one you sent today?
I did some updates to it.
Okay.
Hopefully.
Okay.
I tried it again. I don't know if you can see it.
Yep, no, I got it. I'll pull it up. I can present it for you. Hold on just a second. Okay, here we go. Okay, is that visible to everyone?
Yes.
Okay. And then we've covered the colors, so now the picture that you were talking about.
Yeah, and so this is the picture of the cars from the past to include an all-white scheme in the back. You can go on to the next slide. So basically, some people felt it was intimidating, and my response to that is, I mean, this is a Ford Explorer. It's not a Humvee. It's not a tank. It's a utility vehicle that are on the streets daily. You can go to the next slide. And if you can just hit play. This is from last year's town meeting. I can't hear it. But I can't hear Alan either. Basically, in essence, this was a resident on town meeting floor basically stating that what was important to him was who was in the cruiser. And I've talked about on numerous occasions about hiring extremely hard to manage easy. And it is about our employees and the safety of our town and our employees. You can go to the next slide. I think you missed, yeah. So basically, this is one of our officers that was recently hired under my watch. This is Alicia O'Brien. She was named Employee of the Month in town this week for a lot of her community policing initiatives she did. And this is who's in your cruisers, these professional officers. You can go to the next slide, that, you know, are really doing a really good job in very tumultuous and difficult times. Again, we have two officers, community policing officers, Officer Dyson, Officer Trainer, you know, with our youth and with the public. You can go to the next slide. Again, Halloween safety initiative by the three officers that I just mentioned during COVID. Myself and other officers attended. This is your police department, very approachable. And like I said, the bottom line, to keep our officers safe. You can go to the next slide. Again, local car wash. You know, our staff, I mean, we try to participate in, as you know, in as many community policing events as possible. You know, you talk about this parade, there's going to be a lot of work for my staff, you know, to ensure safety, and we embrace it, quite frankly. And the only thing that has changed, there's no issues that I was aware of, is basically, you know, when COVID happened in a lot of the social, you know, unrest. You can go to the next slide. This initiative, and the reason why I put this in is basically, you know, we have a park and walk that we do on shift where we get out of the cars and we walk around. We have an initiative called No Shave November, where the officers donate their own money to assist a family in need. And in this particular year, we decided to help a family that they were looking to actually purchase a bed for their child. They needed a bed. So one of our officers during his park and walk, Officer Darrell Jones, he entered Boston Interiors and he says, "Hey, why do you have facial hair?" And he explained it. And this is where we partnered with Boston Interiors, and they not only have supplied the bed, they supplied everything, you know, from pillows to blankets to sheets. And this is us connecting with the community. And that is who this police department is. It's not an intimidating police department. And don't get me wrong, you know, when we need to handle tough things, we will, and we have the training to do that. But, you know, I don't believe our cruisers are intimidating at all. This is who we are. This is the Westborough Police Department. And you can go to the next slide. So this came up, and a lot of people who they're concerned about the tinted windows, and there's several reasons for the tinted windows, and you can go to the next slide, Alan. And basically, we just had a couple of recent house breaks where we had to do the people were home when the home was broken into. Someone grabbed the television and ran out. And basically, you put that resident in the cruiser and for a show up to identify the individual, and it protects witness identity. Officers utilize the privacy glass with a woman and a child during a tense domestic situation. You know, we want to make sure maintain their dignity. And also, we have stranded motorists who sometimes are reluctant because they don't want to be seen in a cruiser. And I'll go to the next slide. Also, we don't want to, you know, offend, you know, prisoners that we arrest. We are CJIS compliant, so we have computer access in the cruisers. There's Corey information that must be kept out of view, and officers can focus on tasks without being in violation of that. And quite often, if you look at his mobile data terminal to his right, you know, we do reports. Our officers, our men and women do reports in the car, and that's distracting. And we want to make sure that they're safe. And I understand, I as chief, as the temporary caretaker of this department, have to look at the 1%ers. What could possibly happen? And if you can go to the next slide, that basically the multicolored cruisers, there is a savings because we don't have to paint the clips white, the doors white. You know, and I talked about doing their reports in the car, and our equipment is protected. We do have very expensive equipment in there, and we want to make sure everything else that it's safe. And again, I had mentioned the prisoner transport. Alan, if you can go to the next slide. If you could just see if it'll play. If the volume doesn't work, we can skip it, and I can just explain it.
No, nope, it's not letting me play it, unfortunately.
So what this is this happened out in California where two deputies sheriffs were in their cruiser, and our man walked up to them and shot them multiple times. There was a female officer. She's a 31-year-old mother. You know, these are human beings, and our officers are human beings, and we want to make sure And there was one woman that went on a social media page and said, she wants to see if the officer's in the car or not in the car. My point is, I want to make sure they're safe. And I can assure you the officer that's in the car is very professional and very well trained. And it is ultimately, it's for their safety. You can go to the next slide. And yeah, if we can go back. So there was a complaint made to town, and I won't read this, verbatim. And like I said, hopefully we'll be able to play it at town meeting. I sent it to IT today, but they were upset because they feel that somehow that this symbol on our cruiser, which is a symbol that I'm going to explain in a minute, and that the flag was carried in the Capitol along with many American flags, where we don't believe the American flag, nor do we believe the thin blue line flag is any type of symbol of hate. In fact, the thin blue line has not been recognized as a hate symbol by the Anti-Defamation League or the Southern Poverty Law Center. And that's from Mass Chiefs. We discussed this at a meeting, this very topic. The black space above represents society, order, and peace, while the black below, crime, anarchy, chaos. The thin blue line running between them, law enforcement, keeps crime from pervading society. When placed in the context of a flag, there is an added element of patriotism. And as illustrated, the star symbolizes the law-abiding citizens who benefit from the sacrifice of our heroes on the line made to protect them. The thin blue line flag is flown as a matter of principle to show support for the thankless work that police officers do. Law enforcement often look on it as a reflection of courage and tribute to those who have fallen in the line of duty. The thin blue line flag does not represent any political faction or movement. The thin blue line flag does not represent the thin blue line flag does not represent hateful ideology. This became popular in 1950. Chief Parker from the Los Angeles Police Department, he's the one that initiated this. And I wanted to add, in this presentation, the military, the fire department, dispatchers, rescue, all have similar symbols. And this flag on the Westborough cruiser was put there to honor those, quite frankly, that made the ultimate sacrifice, to bring those officers, their memories, their legacies on patrol with us. And I will tell you, in my humble opinion, it would destroy morale to remove that flag from the cruiser. And I can tell you as your police chief, it's a symbol. It's a symbol to honor those that really have given it all for their towns. And if people think it can't happen in communities like Westborough, I will just say I worked in communities in Auburn with 3 officers, 2 were shot and killed, and 1 died in a motor vehicle accident. The James Lonchitis, he was shot and killed in Shrewsbury. His son's a lieutenant and also a pilot in the military. I spoke at his killer's parole hearings on 2 different occasions. It can happen. And Shrewsbury touches our borders. And just to conclude, the Westborough Police Department works hard and remains committed to building trust and legitimacy with our citizens by providing professional service. And I've said this countless times that is second to none. As an organization, we embrace a diverse workforce reflective of the community we serve. We are not defined by the color or style of equipment we use to keep you safe. We are defined by the professional, compassionate, and community-oriented officers that serve your community every day, 24/7, 365. I can't tell you how proud I am of them. Honored I am to be your police chief. I'm hoping this isn't an issue again. At town meeting, this is a police vehicle that is driven by all segments of society. It happens to be black. And I find it almost ironic in these times that somehow black is intimidating, where we're embracing, what's going on throughout this country now. We are 100% on board, with any organization, whether it be Black Lives Matter movement or anything that's against police brutality and police violence. And this cruiser is not in any shape or way meant to be some intimidating vehicle. It's a safe vehicle for our officers and our community. And as I stated before, hopefully this issue will be put to rest. But like I said, just to conclude, extremely honored to be your chief, working with some of the finest men and women of this department. And when I say diversity, we're hiring 2 officers this July, and we're hiring, an officer that is going to show the makeup of the community. And I'm very proud to say we didn't give this officer a conditional offer based on the color of his skin. We gave this offer because he was the most qualified person for us available at this time. And I applaud the town manager and the board when we negotiated with the Patrolmen's Union, bringing in the educational incentive, because the 2 officers we're bringing in, one has a master's degree and one has a bachelor's degree, highly trained, specialized. We're a special place. This is a great town. And I promise you, as the temporary caretaker, I'm going to ensure that we hire, we promote the very best. And there's some exciting times coming that we're going to be talking about in the future with a number of promotions and hires due to retirements and different things. So again, not to be long-winded, I appreciate the opportunity to address the board again. Be happy to answer any questions. But I just want to be clear. This is the Westborough Police Department cruiser. And any change that will be made to that cruiser will be when my tour of duty here in town has been complete. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions from the board? Shelby?
Not so much a question, but just a comment. Chief Laurie, I want to thank you for the presentation. I learned some things I didn't know, but I really do appreciate sort of the whole picture that you've shared with us. The concerns about officer safety sort of, to me, were intuitive, but the understanding about protecting potentially witnesses, as well as information that is in the vehicle, certainly from a health perspective, I can relate to that. So, I think this presentation is helpful. I hope the public listens to it and hears it. I think you said you're going to bring it to town meeting. Is that correct?
So yes, there's a short video that you didn't see, like I said, and there's just a resident that kind of just, in his words, reflected what I said.
No, I remember that very well. But yeah. So anyway, seriously, thank you for this, because I think it's information is powerful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief. Okay, moving on. Next on the agenda is a discussion and vote to amend the banner policy. So, Christy, if you wouldn't mind introducing this.
Yep. So, as the board's aware, we developed a banner policy for the banner that goes across West Main Street, and we did that in the fall of 2018 after the poles were put up, and we found that the community wanted to use it. We amended it in July of 2020 because the dimensions that were stated on the policy were not the correct dimensions according to the DPW, so we did fix it. More recently, and the board has heard this discussion, there's an interest in groups using the banner light pole spaces. And so we needed to update the policy to allow for that. And so this policy this policy, instead of being the West Main Street banner policy, is just the banner policy. We're keeping things consistent with the West Main Street banner that goes across West Main Street close to Town Hall. We just updated some of the language. And then we added the light pole banner policy. So that gives priority to town-sponsored information and events, and then gives the second priority to advertise and or fundraise for community events to be held in Westborough. So we talked about this when the Rotary came before you and gifted to the town the downtown winter lights. And that's something that they had asked if they would be able to use the poles on the banner. I know the Cultural Council is also interested in using that space. And I know the Veterans Department is also interested in using that space to do Hometown Hero banners. And so because those take a lot longer for the DPW to put up, there's a longer amount of time that they can be left up, which is a period of 90 days. And then everything else is fairly consistent. There's red lines on the policy because I moved some things around. But in terms of banner requirements for both the West Main Street banner and also the light pole banners, because we did look back and find that the light pole banners had been ordered to be different sizes. In working with the DPW, we've just asked that people consult with the DPW before ordering the banners so that we can confirm that the size is appropriate based on the experience that we've had.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Shelby.
Yeah, so appreciate the consolidation of this policy with the light pole banners so that it's all in one. It read, Christy, a little bit confusing to me. I wasn't sure at times in the policy what banner we were talking about. So, so for example, it says time allowed, banners are allowed for up to 2 weeks. And then time allowed is under light pole banners. I mean, I think that there are two different timelines, but just the way it read, I just thought that maybe we should be specific in each section.
Well, I think, Shelby, the first section is the West Main Street banner that's highlighted, and the second section is the pole banners. The first time allowed refers to the West Main Street banner. The second time allowed is under the light pole banner section.
Well, yes, I thought that, Ian, but then after the light pole banner section, then if you look at the following requests to be for banners, then it's now talking about all kinds of banners, I think. I just think it could be clarified. So that's all.
It may be hard to look at in the red line, but Ian's right. There's two sections, and then the end is just about how to make a request for hanging either type of banner.
Okay, well, as long as it's clear and doesn't, it doesn't create ambiguity, it might be the red line. Thank you for pulling this together, Christy.
Could we just put a heading?
Sure.
That is, procedure to request,
Sure.
or how to request, so that it's clear that's separate from the two sections describing the regulations. Okay. Any other questions or feedback? Okay. Patrick.
Yeah, just in light of our earlier topic around the Rotary banners and the fact that we were allowing the Veterans Advisory Board to potentially hang a banner up here, is that, it doesn't fall under, if I'm reading this correctly, it doesn't, I don't know if it falls under any one of the 4 categories listed as far as a description. So is that something that we should include?
I would see it as a
town-sponsored event.
Oh, thank you, Christy. I was going to say the same thing. The flags on the Rotaries and that banner would be a town-sponsored event.
Okay, so okay, thank you. That's it.
Okay, then I will entertain a motion to approve the banner policy as presented and amended.
I'll make that motion. Oh, Ian. No, Ian, you got it. Go ahead.
Either way.
I think Shelby won. Ian, you're going to second?
I will second Shelby.
All right.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none, roll call vote. Ian?
Johnson, yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Shelby?
Marshall, yes.
Patrick?
Welch, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. The motion passes on a vote of 5-0-0, 5 being present. Next item on the agenda is amendment to a discussion vote to update the fuel-efficient vehicle policy.
So Alan, we're gonna actually pass over this one for this evening.
Okay, and so we'll move it to a future agenda. Excellent.
Yes.
And then on that note, next on the agenda is a discussion and vote to approve the Climate Action Plan Letter of Support. And so, Christy, if you'd like to introduce that.
Yep, so I apologize that that wasn't in your packet, but I did send that out in an email. It's a very brief letter of support that the Climate Action Plan group had requested as an appendix. You may have seen that when you're reading through the document, that they had an expectation of that letter. And so I'm just putting that before you so that we can upon your approval, forward that off to the Climate Action Plan Task Force, who is working to post the Climate Action Plan and working with CMRPC to advertise the completed plan out to the community.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments on the letter? Okay, then I will move to approve the Climate Action Plan letter of support as presented.
Second, Marshall.
Thank you. I have to ask, any further discussion or comment? Seeing none, roll call vote. Ian.
Johnson, yes.
Sean.
Keough, yes.
Shelby.
Marshall, yes.
Patrick.
Welch, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. Motion passes on a vote of 5-0-0, 5 being present. Okay, next item on the agenda, I will hand off the floor to Christy and Kim. It is a discussion vote on interdepartmental transfers.
Yeah, so as some of you are aware, in May and June of each year, we're able to do interdepartmental transfers as long as they're approved by both the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen. And so what that means is that we can, upon the approval of those of your board and the Finance Committee, we can move money from one budget to another. If there's a need in one budget and there's excess in another, we can move the money. So I know there's sometimes there's confusion about sort of when you're taking money from different departments and going into other departments, is there some sort of correlation or reason that you're going into one department, and there's really no relationship there. It's really just about where there's available money and which departments have the need. So in this case, so you'll see this on the agenda in all of May and June. In this case, this is actually a fairly easy one. So town meeting votes the salary and wages line and also votes the expenses line. So we can't move money in between those two lines until May and June with the approval of both the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen. So the Zoning Board of Appeals is asking that we move $800 from the salary and wages line into the expenses line because of money needed for advertising this year. And this has already been approved by the Finance Committee.
Okay, that was going to be my question. So any other questions or comments or concerns? Okay, then I will entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the interdepartmental transfer as presented.
I'll second.
Thank you. Select Board members Johnson and Welch. With seeing no hands up for further discussion or comment, we'll do the roll call vote. Ian.
Johnson, yes.
Sean.
Keough, yes.
Shelby.
Marshall, yes.
Patrick.
Welch, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. So it passes on a vote of 5-0-0, 5 being present. Item 15 on the agenda is any follow-up discussion with respect to the fiscal year 2022 budget and our annual town meeting warrant.
This is just, oh, sorry.
No, can I just ask, I just want to make sure, because I know sometimes changes come through, is the information in our packet what we should be referring to, Christy, as you start speaking, or is there anything more current in email?
So this is really just a placeholder. So in your packet, I believe that's the posted warrant.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that hasn't changed. That can't change.
Right.
And then I didn't put anything in. This was really just a placeholder because we have town meeting coming up on Saturday. So I don't have anything specific. If the board wanted to bring anything up, I did forward you today draft motions, which actually have subsequently been reviewed by town council. So those will be a little bit different. The board doesn't weigh in on those typically because it's already just taking the actions that we've already discussed. And town council will certainly make sure that the verbiage is appropriate. The only other piece that I just wanted to mention is I did send out the speaker list. And as I mentioned in my email, the ones that are under the Board of Selectmen, I just sort of randomly assign and try to sort of follow the interest of what I think that you individually might be interested in. And there's others that you might just get. So, and just also, especially for Sean and Patrick, if you're listed as a presenter, that means that you'll make the motion, and then typically most of the articles, I'll just give you some bulleted statements that you can make related to the article. Those are almost complete, so I can send those out. So if you have questions, you can certainly follow up with me. So I guess at this point, unless there isn't anything else, any other questions related to the warrant or the budget, you could fight over which articles were assigned to you. But other than that, I don't really have anything specific.
If someone feels particularly passionate about an article, or there's a particularly long motion that they want to read, just let Christy and I know. We're happy to shuffle things around.
The newer selectmen, right?
I think Ian got the longest one though.
You did?
You did.
Oh, jeez.
You're good though. You're good.
It's because you're so good at reading all those proclamations.
So I think that's it. I just wanted to keep that on there if people had questions, but.
Okay, so.
Alan, I have a question.
Yes.
Actually, unrelated to the budget and warrant articles, but more about town meeting. I know, man, I don't even know what the temperature looks like, but I believe last year at town meeting in the late spring that we, as a board, determined that it would be business casual versus business dress. So I would throw that out there as a option for us, and then we could communicate. If we so believe, we can ask Christy and Kim to communicate that to department heads, et cetera.
Yeah. Unless I hear objections, I'm perfectly fine with business casual and not having to be in a suit and tie.
Great. We'll let the department.
I just picked out my tie for this event.
We're not saying you have to be business casual.
Right.
That's true.
You can show up and put us to shame.
No tie.
Our town moderator has been known to show up at community events in top hat and tails. So we shall always see. Patrick.
I just had one question, Christy, on the town water contract. Did you said that earlier that it got posted for Saturday morning before the meeting? What time is that at? I'm sorry, I didn't see it yet.
8 a.m.
8 a.m. Okay, thank you. We'll just meet at the school.
Yep.
We'll get good parking spaces.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. The people camping outside to get the first in line.
That's true. That's true.
It's like a Chick-fil-A opening.
Okay. We need to get a hot dog truck out there or a donut truck, and we'll get lots of people.
Yeah, good idea.
Okay. So next on the agenda is something I want to bring up, sort of a discussion vote about the timing, moving towards, as the town's heading towards moving, towards reopening, and the governor and the COVID-19 experts at the state level are relaxing restrictions to discuss the timing of and process related to going back to in-person meetings. As folks may be aware, the school committee has had a couple of in-person meetings at the Great Hall in the Forbes building. They are masked and at 6-foot distances, so they're spreading out. Their caveats are that, there is still capacity limit in the rooms. And so they ask that that be used by people with business before the board or people there for citizens request, which is their open forum. And that if people aren't comfortable or aren't able and want to participate in open forum, they can send it in writing and have a member of the board read it into the record. And so that's how they're handling the meetings. It's a little bit hybrid. And so I'm wondering what our comfort level is and our thoughts about returning to in-person meetings. And I'll open it up for discussion. Ian.
I'm entirely comfortable with if the board decides to move to in-person meetings. I think that we're moving ahead as a community, a state, and a country, hopefully. But I think it's good. I think it would be good for the community, for us to meet in person, folks to be able to present in person, as long as we just observe all the requirements that are still in place, but I would be comfortable if others were. But again, I look at it as a board decision, but personally, I'd be comfortable with going back and meeting in person.
Okay. Any other comments or feedback? No, I'll ask Shelby.
Yeah, same here as Ian. My one question, because admittedly I haven't watched any school committee meetings since they've been back in person, is the audio quality working with them being masked? Because I know sometimes we have challenges unmasked, and I wouldn't want that to, we'll be able to hear each other, but I just didn't know if the audio, I don't know if Westborough TV has had any feedback from that.
The meetings I've watched, the audio quality has been good. I think there's two aspects to this. One is, how we return to in-person meetings, but then also, having the meetings be in this format has had some benefits, right? And that, it's easier when we're presenting for us to share a screen and amplify it than it is, historically when presentations are made and Westborough TV is, showing an image of what's being projected on the wall in Memorial Hall, right? And so I think as we make this transition, we can work with Westborough TV to see if there's a way to, reconfigure the system in Memorial Hall a little bit that would allow for some of the technical advantages of having the online component. I also think long-term, just as a convenience to those with business before the board, to allow in remote participation. I mean, we have, site plan reviews come to us, and the architect and the engineer are from Canton or from New Hampshire, and to give them the ability to participate remotely as opposed to having to drive in and have the entire team in person is something we might want to consider as we move forward as well. I guess I have a question for Christy and Tim, in that I don't know if you've had a chance to speak with department heads. They're often, as we saw this evening, active participants in our meetings, and want to make sure that if there's any feedback or concerns from department heads about us returning to in-person.
I haven't, I don't think there's much feedback. I don't think there's any concern. I know that I think Selectman Marshall had made a comment at one point about trying to figure out how we might sort of continue this practice in the future for people to present remotely. And I think, if we were able to figure that out, I think that would be appreciated. I was actually on a Mass Municipal Association call today, and I know that there's a lot of things like this that they're sort of trying to work through in anticipation of the full reopening. And there's a lot of practices that came up throughout COVID that I think people are hoping to keep in place. So I think we'll get additional guidance, just going forward, because there are many people looking into this. Obviously, it's very important that before the governor lifts the state of emergency, we have clarity on all of these open meeting law, the ABCC alteration of premises, things that we did. There's many things that will be impacted by the governor's full reopening. I know that's more than what you asked me for, but I think there's a lot coming down from the state related to things like this.
So from a timing perspective, would we look at, our first meeting after town meeting 2 weeks from tonight, or would, we look to start this with our first meeting in June? As far as going back to in person, any thoughts from the board? Patrick, I call on you because you're unmuted.
It's because I forgot to put myself back on mute. I guess my only thought, no, I'm not opposed to going back. I guess I'll look for the governor and the government, federal government's guidelines on how we can meet in person in a space of that size with this many people. Do we have to wear masks even though we're vaccinated? Those types of questions. And I have no idea if all of you are all vaccinated, but I would not be opposed to starting the week after annual town meeting. provided that we have those guidelines from the governor and federal governments.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, and I'm okay as well. I think 2 weeks from now, everybody will have had the opportunity, if they want to, at least get one shot, and so we can have a certain degree of confidence. I think I'm fine with it. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think following town meeting is a great time to do it. Let's just
Okay.
why wait till June?
So why don't I take as an action item to work with Christy and Westborough TV, and between now and then, sort of meet and do a walkthrough of the Memorial Hall, figure out exactly how we'd set up the seating for the social distancing, well, the physical distancing, right? With respect to the sound system and the cameras and things of that nature, as well as take a step back, look at the current guidance for how we'd set up the room. And unless there's something that would prevent us from doing so, we would look to meet in person, starting with our next meeting. Christy?
I just wanted to mention, sort of to follow on that point, and I apologize for leaving it off my town manager report, but we are looking to bring everyone back and fully open town buildings, also following town meeting on Monday, May 17th.
Okay, so it fits in with that as well. Okay. I don't believe we need a formal vote on this.
Just a quick question on that, Christy. Will I guess the policies of the buildings and things like that, are those still in effect in regards to people signing in, people at the front door tracking, all of those types of things? Are those still in place?
Yep. So people do have to sign in at the front door. We still have the plexiglass, and you still have to wear masks. Kim has updated our policies to be sent out tomorrow in terms of following on what the governor has said.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. So nothing further on that item. Next on the agenda is approval of meeting minutes. We've got two sets, March 15th and March 23rd. And to keep this simple, do people have any comments, questions, or corrections for either set of minutes? We'll start with March 15th. Okay, I see none. Any for March 23rd? Okay, then I will make a motion that we approve the Board of Selectmen minutes for March 15th, 2021 and March 23rd, 2021 as presented.
Seconded.
Okay, and thank you, Patrick, for the second. Seeing no further discussion, we'll do a roll call vote. Ian?
Johnson, yes.
Sean?
EO, yes.
Shelby?
Marshall, yes.
Patrick?
Welch, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. Both sets of meetings are approved on a vote of 5-0-0, 5 being present. Item 18 on the agenda is issues and correspondence. And so I will sort of go in the same order of my Hollywood squares here on the screen and start with Selectman Johnson.
Sure, just a couple of things here. One is, as the representative selectman on the municipal building committee, we continue to meet on the Forbes project. I think we're making progress to try to come to final resolution and closeout, and have had subsequent smaller meetings with our owner's project manager, and things to continue through. So there's still a couple of loose ends, but I feel good that we're making solid progress, and hopefully very soon we'll be able to present back that we have done final closeout on the Forest Municipal Building project. So more to come on that one, but just wanted to give the update that is moving along. And then the second thing is wondering whether, after town meeting, we may as a board want to, and I think I've done this at least a couple of times in the board and finance committee days, but as everybody knows, we continue to have issues with the East Main Street railroad bridge and tractor trailer trucks hitting that bridge. It's becoming a nuisance, and as things again begin to reopen and traffic returns to more normal levels, which it appears to be doing anyways, I'm wondering whether it's something we may want to talk about as a board and figure out some next steps about maybe some, and whether it's a task force or something that I think we should talk about it. I'm sure others on the board have gotten complaints or comments from residents, so as I have, and so I just throw that out there as something that, as time permits, I think we should look to address and see if there may be options or suggestions that we can do to improve the situation. And that's all that I had.
Okay, thank you very much, Selectman Keo.
Okay, thank you. No, I know we talked about the vaccine site earlier, but I just want to say thank you to everybody involved. It's been a tremendous success. Just all the goodwill I think that it's shown and it is received. I also want to say thank you on behalf of two of my kids who were able to get vaccinated over there, got their first shots. So just a wonderful job by the police chief and everybody involved. And just thank you all very much. That's all I had.
Okay, thank you.
Just as a side note, I get my second shot there tomorrow, so I'm very excited. Fully vaccinated as of tomorrow in Westborough.
Awesome. Shelby.
Thank you so much. Just a quick update from some of the committee work that I'm assigned to. So from the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, the committee is heading down a path of sort of three primary areas of focus at this time. One is looking at recognizing, and this will come before the board, I believe on the 25th, if I've got the date right, but recognizing Indigenous Peoples Day. The committee has not taken a vote on that, but that is on an upcoming meeting, but that will come before this board as a recommendation or not. We're also focused on language accessibility in our town. As our residents and businesses engage with the town and services, and looking at the need for an organizational assessment as it relates to all things sort of diversity and inclusion. So three pathways that we're headed down at this point. Also want to give an update on the trustees of soldiers' memorials. We were approached by David Nurse, who many of you probably know, and he's done an extensive amount of research actually on the full contingency of militia Minutemen who walked in April in 1775 in battle for our independence. And come to find out, not all of those men are recognized at the current Minuteman Memorial that's up at Minuteman Park. So he's approached the trustees with a concept of how we might recognize them, and I would envision that to come before the board, this board at some point, but the trustees have voted in support of that. To create a new memorial, not to take down the one that's already there, but to recognize and really tell the story of the 101 men that were involved that very important day. Finally, actually two more things on the Community Preservation Act Exploratory Committee. I believe Alan will be coming before the board at our next meeting. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Yeah, with it's sort of preliminary, I don't even want to call it a recommendation, but looking for the board's support of its sort of preliminary direction. So I look forward to that. And then finally, I happen to be out on the website and I don't see the board's current goals and the town manager goals posted yet. So if we can get that updated, that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Patrick.
Yeah, just a couple of things. I guess quick update from, I attended my first sustainability committee meeting last week. Great conversation. The team has begun working through the transition of the CAP with the sustainability committee. So there's a lot of work to be done there, as you can imagine, with all the work that was done in that document. So really good conversations to kind of look at how to whittle these things down to something that's more manageable and that we can go attack with some good good team efforts. And then I guess one other thing on the vaccination side, I attended the vaccination clinic with Alan and Christy 2 Fridays ago. Just kudos to that whole team. Very professional. It's great to see it. Great to see the various different representatives from our area attend that and support it. So great work there. I would just follow it up. I think I saw on the news today or yesterday that I think the federal government or the CDC is now approved the Pfizer vaccine for down to 12-year-olds, I think I heard. So Christy, I guess I'd be curious if we're going to get any update from the team in regards to additional trays of vaccines that they can expect to broaden out that, because obviously there could be a larger volume of people who want to take part. So that's it. Thank you.
Sorry, just to, I was just pulling up that document. So I know I sent it to you last minute today, but on the last page of the document, the PowerPoint presentation from the Board of Health, they do talk a little bit about the 12 plus, and they do expect to just do some distribution of that. So, but I'll continue to update you as I know more.
Great to hear. Thank you.
Okay. I'll also point out for the, Patrick, did you have anything else?
No, I'm good.
Okay, so I will point out for the public's benefit that if you have a 12 to 15-year-old who's not current, I mean, where DPH hasn't set up the mechanism for them to get vaccine, you can go to the Vax Finder and pre-register. And once they open it up to 12 to 15-year-olds, you'll get notifications of eligibility and get notified that you can go in and start looking for a site. And it will also, that notice will also let you which sites have the Pfizer vaccine. So you can pre-register to get notified, when the system is set up and now, accepting 12 to 15-year-olds. A couple of things. So I have transitioned on my role from the EDC, and Selectman Keogh is taking over, and I want to sort of thank the members of the EDC and Zach for his coming on board and sort of going from 0 to 60 in about 8 seconds and being up full speed. There's a lot of good activity happening in our commercial industrial space, as well as in addition to the current grant program and consulting with the downtown district. There are active businesses looking to move into the downtown area. The EDC awarded a grant to an eatery called The Coop, which currently has a location in Millbury. They're opening a second location on West Main Street in Westborough. They are wings and barbecue, and we'll be serving beverages with those as well in the space that was occupied by the subway. And so I want to point out, for anyone who owns an eatery or restaurant or knows someone who does, this is now the 3rd restaurant or food business that has opened up in our town during the pandemic. That this is such a great place to have a restaurant or an eatery or a bakery that even in a pandemic, it makes sense to open your business or expand to another location. So I'll put that as well. From the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust, a quick update. Our COVID-19 Emergency Rental Assistance Program has been up and running. We're getting a full update that'll be discussed at our meeting Thursday morning at 9 a.m. that Westborough TV, I believe, will be covering that for those who are interested. The last update was about a week ago from the administrators, where we had 12 households that had applied and were expected to receive grants starting with their May 1st rent. There were another 40 applications that had been requested and were in the process of being filled out and completed. And so that program is working. At the same time, due to an influx of federal money, the state has launched an additional emergency rental assistance program. We're gathering the information and we'll start to share it as soon as we have more details. It is different than Raft and Irma in that rental assistance can be up to a year. It also comes with, I believe, up to $1,500 in utility assistance. And there's a program in that, or a component of that program that allows landlords to apply directly for assistance, where the landlord can apply for assistance, get payment directly, and forgive back rent for the residents that they're getting paid for from the state. And so as we can share that information, we will as well. The state programs generally take longer to apply and get approved. The RAFT program, for example, averages 60 days from application to approval. And so we're seeing that our Westborough program is helping folks stay in their apartments during that time, and that we're able to fill that gap for people who are on the edge. They can make sure the rent is paid, that they're stable, and then the state programs with the higher dollar amounts and higher greater longevity can step in and make up the difference. So that is happening as well. As far as correspondence, I've received a couple of correspondence about the railroad bridge. Ian's covered it already, so I won't go into it. The only other correspondence I've received, and I believe I've copied all of these out to the board, including my response, is a number of emails following up on our vote for the letter welcoming the Mass General Brigham project into Westborough. And so I've provided responses to those letters emphasizing that we're not involved in the determination of need. That's really the state and their process, but that if the state determines, looks at the determination of need and decides what services and how much of those services can be provided in Westborough, we certainly welcome that. I've also pointed out, just because there is some misinformation out there about Westborough, that this facility isn't just outpatient surgery. It includes primary care, it includes behavioral health, both of which, if you've had to look for a new primary care physician in our area, that can be challenging. And right now I'm told that teens and adults who are looking for counseling services can face waits of up to 3 or 4 months in this area to get in with a counselor. So those are much needed services. And the facility is accessible and will be accessible by public transportation, which many folks still may not be aware of that we have in Westborough with the VW RTA service, which also recently expanded their territory. And so those are the 2 areas of correspondence that I've received since our last meeting, and that's it for me. Okay, Patrick.
Yeah, just a quick question on the determination of need. Any idea? I mean, any idea how long that process takes to get an answer back from the Department of Health?
I do not.
Okay.
No.
State agency, who knows, right?
Yeah, and it's a complicated process.
Sure it is. Yeah, I can imagine. Thank you.
But there's, it certainly caught the attention. So with that, I will entertain a motion to move into executive session. Ian, do you have a copy of the motion?
Did I miss it? Did we skip over Sean, or Sean, were you all set? Okay, sorry. I didn't miss it. Sleep at the wheel. I apologize.
Yep. Thanks for checking.
Yeah. I will make a motion. I move to enter into executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, and under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate.
Okay, thank you. And Sean Keogh seconds. Any questions or discussions? Okay, roll call vote. Ian.
Johnson, yes.
Sean.
Keogh, yes.
Shelby.
Marshall, yes.
Patrick.
Welch, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. So we'll head into executive session. The chair, under Mass General Law, the chair determines that public discussion of the subject matters of executive session would be detrimental to the town's position in litigation and or negotiation. So we will hold an executive session. We will not be returning to public session after the executive session. And so I wanted to extend a thank you to Westborough TV for once again covering us and making us easily accessible on many platforms to the public in Westborough, and also appreciate the fact that you are juggling many meetings this evening. So thank you very much.